welcome to a special, just a section, just a segment, an interview segment of Master Manual. I'm Spencer Crittenden, you know me, Cohen. I didn't think about I'm here with my buddy Bodie, right?
Yeah, that's it.
Is that how you pronounce it?
That's good. Yep, that's correct.
We talked about him a tiny bit on the podcast on the Instagram page. I've shouted out his account. I met him as a Harmontown fan. He gave me a Slow Quest booklet, which is something he makes. He's a DM, an artist, a creative, a map maker, a cartographer. I don't know. What do you want? Add some titles to that?
No, that sounds great. I wish I could be introduced like that all the time.
Lore master, Imagineer. So what's up with you, huh?
Oh, not much. I'm visiting LA for an unrelated to D&D job.
Right. Well, we're going to cut that out. And how about you visited LA just to do this podcast and you flew yourself out to do it?
That's correct.
Okay. And so thank you so much for making it out here. And we just wanted to, I don't know, something people have recommended is interviewing DMs. And so you were coming out here and we were like, oh, we should get some drinks or something. And then I was like, wait a second. I had this crazy dumb idea. And so this is it. So how long have you said how long have you been DMing?
Probably like 6 years, less than I would have hoped. Like I tried to get into it a long time before that, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so what was your experience with RPGs prior to that then?
Honestly, just like video games. That was it really. I used to probably the closest thing to D&D would be like making. I used to play with RPG Maker and fiddle with the stats and stuff like that. Yeah,
I played that too. So it was video games, and then 6 years ago you started playing RPGs through DMing mostly, or playing.
At first, a few of my friends were trying to learn, and I got into the game through that, and I don't know. I think being a creative person, I just immediately started writing my own stuff. Like, even though I wasn't using it anyway, I just started drawing maps and characters and stuff like that.
Yeah, like when I was a kid, I drew maps and drew little characters even before I knew what D&D was. And so I was like, there's a thing for that? I was like, yeah. And I was just instantly drawing dungeons. Yeah, so I totally know what you mean. So you started with D&D?
Yeah, as a system, yeah, 3.5.
Right.
That was the first. And it was so overwhelming, like, because I came into it so late in 3.5's history, it was like a million books of content, which is so overwhelming, but also really cool.
Did you buy all the books, or did you borrow them from your friends, or what was your access?
I think a lot of it was just looking up like SRDs on the internet, but I really liked the original books, and I think they did a re-release shortly after I started, so I bought these glittery books.
Right. I had the 3 sets and then the 3.5 sets also, and I had so many. I've sold a fair amount of them, and then there was a bunch of other ones I just had on PDF too. But so what was the first stuff that you started making? I don't even know if you remember that kind of. Do you remember your earlier games?
I'm trying. Yeah, so my first game is actually one that's still running now.
Oh wow!
And
from 6 years ago.
Yeah, it was same group. A few people have dropped in and out, but the core 3 players are still there. Mm-hmm. I think it was started in a mining camp, and then a castle fell from the sky onto the mountain that they were mining, and one of the characters was this sort of old man who was naked and had no idea what had happened, and that was sort of the beginning of that campaign.
Was that inspired by Community?
Oh, that's true.
At least not intentionally. Well, I don't mean to do.
No. Maybe. Wait, what's the timeline for that? Would that have?
I'm not trying. Don't worry about it. It's not. I'll cut it out.
No, I'm cool with that.
I remember one time I was doing someone asked me about the Infinifish, and they're like, "Is it from Gears of War?" And I was like, "What?" No, and they're like, "Oh yeah, in Gears of War, you got to blow up the organs of a giant worm thing," and I was like, "Oh wow." It's kind of 1-to-1.
Well, I mean, even pretty much all of fantasy is some sort of strange fanfic, like, you know.
Right, that's the thing, is that, like, you know, if you look at the real lore and then you look at what D&D and Tolkien have created, we're all just we're ripping off Tolkien's only interpretation, you know. Even a goblin looks like it. Even World of Warcraft has vastly different mythos, but a lot of it's still based on Tolkien. But like, I don't know, whatever. I'll get off of it. So that's crazy. So you have all the characters. Have you had a lot of character deaths?
Yeah, so, I mean, I say it's the same campaign. It's set in the same world, but we did switch characters. So they've crossed paths. About halfway, some of the characters died, and then they restarted with new characters.
Right.
But then since then, like, they traveled back to where they had been before and sort of saw this development of, like, a few of the characters had, like, a typical thing of, like, they bought a tavern. And so they actually stayed in that tavern and all this. It was pretty fun to do, to like revisit all this old stuff. Yeah,
that's super cool. How often do you play?
I would say, well, originally we tried for like once a month, and then for some reason that just never worked, and like it would end up being like once every 2 months, once every 3 months, and then we like. I don't know what it's like, the opposite of a normal group thing where we were like, we're going to play every Monday, every week. And we managed to do it for like a long time. Like we played every Monday. Like, I think because we were trying to do it on Saturdays and like there's always stuff on there, but no one ever does stuff on a Monday in our group. So it just worked.
Right. Yeah. Weekends are always a tenuous time because they get replaced by plans without even like, you don't even think about a lot of times. You're like, oh yeah, the weekend, I want to go to the beach. And it's like, oh yeah, D&D. And then it's like, I guess I'm not playing. So yeah, sleepy days are a great way to make it happen. But that's so crazy. What do you do now? I mean, are you still playing?
Yeah, so not as much, but because I've moved away from Australia now. So about 5 months ago, I left to like explore Europe and do more illustration, and I've been trying to do like just video call DMing, which it seems to work, and I think all the other people just sit on a couch with a camera on them.
Oh, so they're in the same place.
Yeah.
So that cuts through a lot of the bullshit because you're the one side, you're the DM side. So there's already a separation. And so you're not being really limited by the separate. You're kind of just playing into it. And then they still have that's great.
Yeah. And they set me up on a giant TV and put the DM screen in front of the TV.
You got to send me pictures of that. That sounds so good. Oh man, that's so awesome. I mean, you're really fucking nailing it, huh? You should be doing a podcast about DMing. What's how do you approach it? Like I don't know. Like, so if I'm thinking about an idea, first I'll get like, say, a seed idea, and then I'll either build out a map or build out a plot line or build out a character, and then I'll kind of fill out the other details so that I have some characters, some idea of a flow of events, and then some idea of the map, and then I kind of fill out those three elements until I have enough places for them to be going, and then some stuff to be doing that I feel like I can fill out a session usually.
I think I guess it's similar. Like I'm really bad with plot. Like I don't think I'm a good like plot developer. So like generally
macro plot or
just any plot, to be honest. Like what I do is I just make content. Kind of like what I do on my Instagram. I just make stuff.
Yeah.
And I just fill in an area that roughly I know they might go. I find whenever I do plot, it just becomes so railroaded that I actually try and avoid making. It's just, here are some people doing some stuff and maybe that'll lead to something, like, and that sort of works out better for me.
Right. When it comes to like either railroading or having an idea of what happens when your players do things that are unexpected, having characters that are fleshed out, that have their own motivations and things that they're doing is the easiest way for you not to have it written down in excruciating detail, but like just make it obvious. Oh yeah, no, he's trying to build a fence, so he's gonna probably maybe go to the hardware store. You know, it's like then you don't have to write it down because it's like you know what he's trying to do, so then you just make it fit, you know?
Yeah. And I think one thing that I've started doing recently, which has been really helpful, is just the like intro sequence to each session, and I make it more like a little bit. I put effort. It's not just, oh, and you started where you left off, go.
Right.
It's more like, oh, and you're doing this, or like, or this was the goal from last time. And I do a little like, I usually write a little mini paragraph about like an introduction to the session, which seems to sort of, I don't want to say it pushes the players in a direction, but it sort of gives them some momentum to be doing something.
Yeah. I liked when I do real games and stuff, I would have a real player recap the events, and then I would help them and fill in if they forget things. I would fill it in, and then also add the details that I want to highlight, but mostly just let them go after it, because usually when that person starts, then other people will help it out, and then it's kind of they're together piecing together. So it's like they're the ones that are bringing themselves back into that mindset, and I'm just kind of like guiding it along. But I think that definitely I mean, just because there's so many minute details, especially over the course of a 3 or 4 hour game. I mean, who knows how long you play, but there's a lot of things that happen that you forget, and everyone has a different experience. So you kind of put it back together to pick it back up. So that's cool. I don't know. Why were we talking about that? What are we doing here? Do you think you have any real weaknesses or anything, or do you have any challenges that you consistently face?
I think doing interesting characters, like presenting interesting characters. I think I can write an interesting character, but I really like, I have to like make a sticky note and put it on my thing saying like, do a voice for this character. Like, cause I think my whole group, we're sort of, I don't want to say we're like a bit shy, I guess. And D&D has definitely opened us up more, playing together and being a bit silly and being more open to that. But I still struggle to like do a voice. Like I feel a bit embarrassed, and I really want to. And I think there's been times when I've done it and it's worked really well. And like, but I don't know. That's sort of my ongoing like issue with D&D for me, is something I really want to improve in.
Well, how do you? So you're a crazy cool art guy. I mean, I really love your style. It's lovely and good, and it's the best. And you got to check them out. What's your Instagram?
It's at Bodie H.
At Bodie H, or H, as I would say. And you got to check it out. But so you're an artist. How do you integrate your art into the stuff that you do for your D&D games, or is that just kind of a separate endeavor, like a focus for your art?
I think like originally when I started this 6-year-long campaign, I used to draw a lot, like for that campaign.
Right.
I think it was like I would do little, like the little pawns, like the little cutout, like
the little
mini
stands,
miniatures. Yeah,
like
I used to
chest.
do a batch of those every game. Like, so if I
okay.
knew they were coming up against like some little flame monsters, I would draw some flame monsters, like a bunch of rats. Had all the characters. I think I had one of our characters often was enlarged by the wizard, and so I did like an enraged enlarged version, just a regular enraged version, and like it was way too much. Like it was great at the time, but
I never thought about enlarging a raging character, but that's pretty smart.
I think it worked. I'm definitely not a rules person, but it definitely worked as like a power thing in 3.5 more so than it does in 5th edition. It's more I think my players would still do it in 5th edition anyway, because it's awesome.
Sure.
But yeah.
It is awesome. Yeah, so but you do it less, so now it's just kind of like it's more you express yourself using kind of like D&D themes and in the realm of making D&D slottable content, but it's kind of separate from your actual DMing now.
I think I try and like, I don't make it specifically for my own games. I think because I don't really, especially because of the separation, I like theater of the mind for my own game, and I find I don't know, like I mean, I like using the props more as an inspiration, and a lot of the art I do, I feel like is more for DMs to look at and be inspired by, rather than necessarily presenting it to their players. So I don't do a lot of the drawn stuff for my own game because I don't show it to my players. So I just do little squiggles and stuff for my own games.
Yeah. That makes sense. So that brings up an interesting question. How do you what props and what kind of materials do you use when you play it at home? And now that you're abroad, do you use the same stuff? You said theater of the mind, so that suggests that you might not use maps, or at least minis and maps.
Yeah, I mean, shortly we used it for a bit when we switched to 5th edition, but like grids and minis and stuff, but always just like representative stuff, like never an actual well painted mini.
Right.
But I kind of just wanted to encourage more like thinking about, I felt like people were leaning too much on the maps when we had maps. So if, we just, and now we use a multiplayer whiteboard for very rough, like if they're not quite sure about how the dungeon is shaped, I'll do a little sketch of the dungeon. But other than that, it's all just voice, just talking.
So do you still prepare the dungeons the same way now that you do that and you just draw them, or do you think you do less explicit kind of detail work now that you're not having all these maps that they're being presented?
I still do sketches of all the maps.
Right,
I think if anything, I like to be efficient with my time, and I'll usually do a little dungeon that I'm gonna finish off later for posting on Instagram or my Patreon or something like that.
Right. So you got this thing. I mentioned it before, but you got Slow Quest is. I would know it as a series of books that you've had printed. You gave me one of them. I think you sell them or something. Yeah. What, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. Slow Quest was sort of it's taken a weird path. It was originally meant to be like a play by mail D&D game where I got random people from the internet to sign up and play by email, but so that's the slowness of it, was this really slow game. But then it just changed slowly. I started developing a world and ended up I wanted to make printed content,
right,
that was interactive, and as much as Pick Your Path adventures are quite limited, it was a really fun way to still present this an interactive adventure in a book. Yeah. And I've just had such fun making these little twisting stories.
Well, what you got a Patreon, right?
Yeah, I just started a Patreon. So it's a monthly pack of content. It's not specifically an adventure so much as just a place and a bunch of content for that place that maybe you would slot into your game somehow, or just enjoy. Yeah,
that sounds awesome. I was thinking about subscribing. You know what? I'll probably subscribe now that I'm just going to put this out there. I'll look like a fucking asshole if I don't, huh? But yeah, no, that seems like a cool thing. I don't know. So yeah, I think it's a cool, whatever. I'm blowing smoke up your ass. Do you want to plug anything specifically and explicitly?
Well, the Patreon you can get to, it's patreon.com/slowquest.
Awesome.
Yeah. And you can see my website at slowquest.com.
Awesome. And you can check out Master Manual. It's on iTunes. Oh, hey, so why don't we do one of our famous segments? Do you want to do some Amlimals?
Yeah.
Oh boy. Okay, so let's pick a monster. I know we talked off mic about a monster. What was it called? I can't think of it.
I think it's the wolf in sheep's clothing.
The wolf in sheep's clothing?
I'm surprised there's not a shorter name for it.
No. It should be longer. The wolf in sheep's clothing is an old school D&D monster that's shaped like, if I recall, a tree stump with a rabbit sitting on it.
Yeah.
If you look closely enough, you might find it also has eye stalks extending out of the tree stump watching you. Right?
Yeah, I think so. It's pretty gross.
I don't know exactly what attacks it has, but I didn't think it had crazy specific special abilities or attacks. I think it mostly just relied on you not suspecting it, because it's essentially a mimic, huh? It looks like something and attacks.
I think the stumpness of it was actually part of it. It had evolved to look like a stump, but then the extra bits were sort of the disguise.
Uh-huh.
But I don't know. I honestly don't know its actual attacks either, but I assumed it just cuddled you to death.
That doesn't sound scary. So that's what a wolf in sheep's clothing is. It's it's not a mimic, but it's very similar to a mimic. Apparently, I looked up online, they can maybe lay eggs in you. You grab the bunny rabbit and you're like, this is lunch, and then you eat it, and then it's full of fucking eggs, and then you die or some shit. So that's what the wolf in sheep's clothing is. What do you wanna do to it, huh?
I was thinking something like instead of luring you with something cute, maybe it's the old gag with the dollar bill on a fishing wire.
Oh yeah.
Maybe it has a cool sword, and it has it way away, and it slowly dangles it all the way, so you follow it to it, and then I don't know, maybe it puts you to sleep to take your stuff to do find better stuff.
Uh-huh. I think it would be able to replicate voices and stuff. So it could make goblin snickering sounds. So it's like, I know I'm being pranked, but I think I'm being pranked by very weak monsters that when I find, I'm going to kick their ass and get this badass sword. So it's all good. But then it's like, then you just see a stump and you're like, wait, what the fuck? And there's all these gems and now I'm unconscious. No, I don't know. So, well, yeah. So primarily, it just is more magically enabled. Then, right? Like, it puts you to sleep and it kind of lures you more for like magic treasure and magic items and treasure and stuff.
I don't know. Maybe it's only using. Maybe it actually eats you. Like maybe it's only getting the items to be better at luring.
Right. Yeah, I'm into that. What if it also like it just loves. Like it loves the game. Like it's like, oh yeah, this is so great. And like it tries to use the best treasure. Like it when it sees a guy, it's like, oh man, that guy looks like he'd love this axe, or something. So it prides itself in doing the perfect treasure traps for its victims or something. I don't know.
And what about the what's that? The recent movie, was it Annihilation? And the monster, I don't want to spoil, but there was something that basically absorbed sounds from its victims. Mm-hmm. So maybe that's the only way it gets these voices, is it to have the goblin voices, it actually tricked some goblins into getting close and mimicked them.
That's super cool. Gnolls, which are one of my favorite races. I really like Gnolls. I'll play a Gnoll character almost any day. In 4th edition, they had a supplemental PDF that I downloaded that talked about how Gnolls are exceedingly tricky and cruel and stuff. And so one thing that they do is they've learned to mimic victims and stuff. And so they they'll pretend to be the voice of a little kid and lure people out, and then they'll just be a huge fucking 7-foot tall hyena man and he just takes you out. And I just think that's such a cool fucking trope, is in general, a mimic kind of trope is cool, but I don't know, just it's so horrifying to think of the most gross kind of evil thing just being help me out,
Yeah,
I don't know.
It could be quite horrifying too if it's a specific situation, but maybe one of your party members ends up falling to this thing, and then you're looking for them and you hear their voice and it's a false sense of oh, they're over here clearly, and then you find their foot.
Yeah. To me, when I'm imagining this version of it, it's almost like the trunk is the mouth, and underneath the ground is this huge kind of bulbous kind of chamber. And I don't know, in the most horrific versions of it, you might see an exploded combinant amalgam of corpse guts and stuff spilling out of the trunk, it's come with us, kind of this eldritch horror kind of vibe. That's horrific.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know, we don't have to do that, we're just brainstorming.
I just want to draw it now.
You got any final thoughts, any last? I think we fleshed something out. I don't know if this is what we were gunning for, but I don't know.
I like it.
Yeah,
I'm gonna use it.
You could use that in your campaign, and at the same time, original character, do not steal property of Bodie. Yeah, so let us know what you think. I don't know. This is, in theory, the first interview that's happened. What happened? This. Let us know what you think. Yeah, that'll do it. Have a great day.